Hey, Lainey.
Hi, Grace. How's it going?
Well, fantastic, because we are doing another episode of Writers to Watch.
Yeah, welcome everyone. If you're tuning in tonight, and we have a wonderful group of authors today, like seriously, might have outdone ourselves. This is a really great group, and you're going to learn a lot. You're going to hear about four different books, and you're going to be able to ask questions. So don't worry, halfway through the show, everyone will come back after you hear a little bit and have those questions ready. They're ready. We've already told them they're coming. So, welcome. And before we get started with our authors, we have a little bit of housekeeping. So, welcome if you're new. This is our monthly video series. We talk to authors and they talk right to librarians through the screen. And we do this every month. So, the next month will at the end give you the next the next roster up. So you'll know about it far in advance, and you can go to librarylovefest.com if you want to find out anything. And speaking of anything to find out at librarylovefest.com, so here are wonderful authors. And tomorrow, no, Thursday, because I don't know what day it is. Thursday, we have a presentation through Library Journal. It's a webinar. We're going to tell you a ton of books. You're gonna walk away thinking, how am I gonna read all of these books? We have so much packed in. You're gonna get a great title list, just what librarians love. And we have a special message from Evelyn Clark, our authors, who are V. Schwab, and Kat Clark, writing as Evelyn Clark. And they have made a very special message for librarians. So don't miss that. Sign up. You can still sign up. It's on librarylovefest.com at the top or on Library Journal. You can do that there
I
as
also
well.
put it in the chat just now. So,
Thank you, Grace. Grace always thinks of that. Thank you. So sign up for that and you'll hear even more from us. It's a title presentation with only a video from an author. And then, yeah, any other housekeeping, Grace, has been, I can't believe it's already October, which is wild, but we have a really great
um,
series of writers to watch coming up for you too.
yeah, we can go over our November people at the end. So, stay to the end to see our November roster, which is very exciting. We're very, very pumped for that as well.
Yes. And Galley Gab Fest. Do we want to talk briefly about Galley Gab Fest while we have everyone here? So Galley
Yeah.
Gab Fest is our monthly chat with Grace and myself, and we just tell you about books and galleys. It's very informal. You can come ask us questions. We might do like, I don't know, themes, whatever you want, whatever you need. We'll come up with a title list of books, a new and upcoming, and maybe even like some new news that we have. And that one we are back in full swing in
November
November,
19th.
the 19th.
Yeah.
So if you want to know, just chat with Grace and myself, come on down. That's on the same avenues you're watching this, Crowdcast and Facebook. All right, we feeling good?
Yeah.
Everyone out there, tell us how you're doing, and we will move on to the first author.
Okay. I am very excited to welcome on Claire Douglas.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. And we know it's late for you, so thank you. I
Would
appreciate
you
it.
Yeah,
out
it's
there
okay.
tell us how you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Sorry, I think we have some late.
Oh yeah, there's some
Oh,
feedback.
there we go. I think we're good. All right. I'm gonna read a bio from you, and then I'm gonna pass it off to you, and a really good quote. So
Oh,
really
well.
good quote that we got in for The New Neighbors, which is on sale February 17th, 2026. So Claire Douglas is the Sunday Times #1 bestselling author of 11 standalone novels, including The Sisters, Local Girl Missing, Last Seen Alive, Do Not Disturb, Then She Vanishes, Just Like Other Girls, and more. Her books have sold over 2 million copies in the UK and have been published worldwide. And we have a really great quote from Lucy Clark, the international bestselling author of One of the Girls in Castaways. She says, "The New Neighbors has all of the trademarks of a classic Claire Douglas novel, an utterly compelling plot, a protagonist you're rooting for, and smartly plotted twists that reveals that come thick and fast, an absolute blockbuster." So we're really excited to have you here. I also wanted to call out this is a trade paperback original, but we will also have a simultaneous hardcover for all of you librarians. So yeah, I'm going to pass it off to Claire to tell you more about The New Neighbors.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so The New Neighbours is a psychological thriller. It's about a woman called Lena, and she's in her mid-40s, and she has a son just about to leave home. So he's 17, and he's about to go to university. So she's feeling a little bit bored because she's split up with her husband, and she gets a bit fascinated by the neighbours who move in next door. So there's an older couple who are in their like late 60s called Marielle and Henry Morgan. Um, they are like unassuming, they're very highly educated, they seem quite posh, and she sort of looks up to them slightly. She's met them a couple of times. So the novel starts when she meets them for the first time. And then later that day, she's in the garden and she's collecting some sound for her son's media studies project. So she has one of these big boom microphones. And as she's in the garden, it's a really hot day, she overhears a conversation between Marielle and Henry Morgan next door. And it sounds like they're discussing committing a crime. So she gets very obsessed with this. She only gets a snippet of it on her recording, so she can't prove anything. But her friends and family are like, you just leave it alone. But she gets obsessed and thinks that she has to try and do something to stop them from committing this crime. I won't say what it is because that's part of the thing. But yes, so that's the setup for The New Neighbours.
Thank you so much. You have so many librarian fans. Yeah, I had somebody ask me, they're like, when can we get our hands on this? So the e-galley is up, and if you're watching and registered, you will have received a widget. So you can start reading soon. So thank you, Claire. I'm gonna put you back in the virtual green room and we'll head to our next author.
Thank you.
I'm muted. There we go. Come on screen, Brad Meltzer. I welcome Brad Meltzer to the screen.
Ta-da!
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not sure if I'm on.
Okay. Yeah, I can see you. You're all
Oh,
good.
you can see me. Okay, good. Then
Perfect.
I'm on. It
You're
worked.
good. I'm gonna leave the beautiful cover up there for a second and then I'll take it down. But this is such a cool cover.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of people vote on this cover.
Oh yeah, wow. I mean,
We always like go on our social media. I don't mean like official people. I mean like everyone who reads our books votes.
wow, that's so cool. Okay, well, keep that in mind for the next one. People can come and vote for the next one, right? We hope. We hope next one's coming very soon. Okay, so I'm going to do an intro and then I'm going to hand it off. So Brad Meltzer is the Emmy-nominated #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Lightning Rod and 12 other best-selling thrillers. He also writes nonfiction books like The JFK Conspiracy and The Ordinary People Change the World Kids book series. Brad is also the host of Brad Meltzer's Decoded, which was on a lot in my house on the History Channel, and is responsible for helping find the missing 9/11 flag from his show, Brad Meltzer's Lost History. And The Viper is a Ziganola novel, and it's coming out January 6, 2026. So we're thrilled to have you, and we can't wait to hear more about the book.
I appreciate it. So I will start with this, and I always feel like I should tell you a little about where we're going to begin. And here's where we begin. A man named Andrew Fetchmeyer walks into a funeral home. He's sick. He's going to die. And what he does is he's holding a hanger with a blue suit on it, his favorite blue suit, because this is the suit he wants to be buried in. Because that's what people do. When you know you're going to die and you have no family or friends, you plan your own funeral. You say, here's the suit I want to be buried in. So he walks in this funeral home. But here's the thing. If you right now go in and want to open a new bank account, they'll have to file some paperwork that'll get filed with the government and it can be tracked. If you go to the UPS store and you open up a PO box, there's paperwork that gets filled out that can be tracked. They have, cookie jars that now when you open them will notify a phone that someone stole your cookies. I mean, everything's connected, everything's tracked now. But if you walk into a funeral home and you give them the suit you want to be buried in and you hide something in the pocket of that suit, you have the perfect hiding spot that no one will ever find. And that's where the book begins. Andrew Fetchmeyer walks into this funeral home, says, here, this is the suit I want to bury him. He leaves that funeral home. He's sick, he's dying. But as he gets back to his hotel room, there's a knock on the door. Someone kills him and shoots him dead. And they're like, where's the thing? And he says, I don't know what you're talking about before they kill him. And of course, no one knows it's in this suit. hidden in a funeral home. And the least likely person is about to find what's hidden in that suit. And I just ruined chapter 1 of The Viper for you. So that's the opening of it. I think for me, of course, what matters the most are the characters you populate it with. And when I was writing this book, Zig and Noel are characters. This is now their third book. But as some wonderful authors have put in the blurb, this is the first and perfect place to jump on and start with Zig and Noel if you've never read them before. We treat it like you can read it as book one. And I'll tell you about my main character I was in the military, and with the Army took me to this giant warehouse on a military base years ago. And I'm going through this warehouse. It's like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? It's like just all this stuff. And they have all these paintings. They have all this art stored there. And I'm like, why does the military have all this art? And they explained to me, the art painted by generals and painted by lieutenants and painted by, they had Adolf Hitler's paintings. They had all. I'm like, why does the military have all this art? And this is true that since World War I, the U.S. Army has had a painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen. And I'm like, and this is going back to whether it's, storming the beaches of Normandy, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's 9/11. I'm like, you're telling me that everyone else is racing in with guns blazing, and you've got someone who's racing in with nothing but a paintbrush in their pocket. That sounds like the craziest guy in the world. I want to meet him. I got to meet that person. And they said, I said, I got to meet him. And they said, you mean her? You want to meet her? And right there, I was like, okay, this is the most interesting person I'm going to meet. Her real name was was Amy Brown. I turned her into Nola Brown and gave her a whole new backstory and a whole new personality, but I named her Brown after the amazing real person who was the artist in residence in the U.S. military. And Nola Brown is a painter who can see the flaw in anything. Whenever she looks at you, she sees the flaw. She sees if you favor one leg because you had knee surgery. She sees if you turn your buckle and tighten it this way, she knows you're left-handed rather than right-handed, depending on which way you pull it. She can see that you have creases on this side, but not this eye. And that's because you're the sharpshooter, you're the assassin in the room, because that's the eye you aim with. She will always find the flaw in you. And Nola Brown, when she paints, misses nothing. She can't see with her naked eye, but when she starts doing the drawing, it comes to life based on real people that I met in the military. She is paired with Zig, who is a mortician with the heart of gold. And he believes if you put good into the world, then the world will be a better place. That's a beautiful idea. It's a completely naive idea, but it's an idea worth fighting for. So Zig believes you make the world a better place like that. Nola believes if you want the world to make sense, you grab it by the throat and you force it to make sense. You got to fight for things, especially when you see injustice. And what I've realized after all these pages with them is that Zig and Nola are just both sides of me. One who completely believes you got to make the world a better place, and one who believes you have to fight against injustice. And I'm just trying to figure out which side of me is right. And of course, they both are. So we have now a galley, so you can get the galley if you want to read it. The cover's the orange one you saw, but watch out because the Viper's coming, and I'll see you in January. And most important, thank you, librarians. I will end with this. I only sit here because my librarian, we had no books in my house growing up. My grandmother had a library card. And I remember going to that library in Brooklyn, and they said to me, this is your section. I thought they literally meant those were my books. And they were. And that's where I met my new best friends, Judy Bloom and Agatha Christie. And I went back to that library to see if we could track down the librarian and say thank you. I couldn't find her, but I will say thank you to you. So appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I've read it. Now I want to go read it again. That was really good. I think that first chapter, it just draws you in. And what I love about your work in general is that you are giving this thrilling, great narrative with a lot of heart, but you are learning something. I feel like I'm learning something all the way through. And so I can't imagine what your research tabs on your computer look like. But thank you for telling these stories. And I'm so glad you also said that you can treat it like book one, because I think a lot of our librarians are handing books to people and they want to make sure that they can kind of jump in at any time. So I'm glad you said that as well. I just want to read, you have like so many great quotes. We have Jack Carr, Lee Bardugo, like it goes on and on. But I just want to just point out like how great these quotes are, and I can't wait to hear more. I did want to ask you, we talked offline a little bit about all of the book banning happening, and you have been unfortunately on the side of your books being banned and having to fight that. So as these librarians are on the front lines, is there anything you want to say about book bans and their fight?
Listen, keep fighting. They banned, just so you know, our kids' book on I Am Rosa Parks, I Am Martin Luther King Jr., I Am Billie Jean King. We fought all three of the book bans. In fact, when they banned Rosa Parks and Dr. King, I got a phone call from CNN, from Fox News, and from MSNBC, all asking me, saying, this is ridiculous. You need to come on the show. When Fox News and MSNBC and CNN agree, you know you screwed up, right? Someone did something wrong. And we fought all three book bans, all of them. We got each one of them on back on the shelves where we fought it. Sadly, I Am Billie Jean King, our kids' book there, is in the top 10 most banned children's books last year. And the only thing to do is fight and fight and fight. Use those lessons of Rosa Parks and Dr. King. And I thank you for fighting for us. You are on truly the front lines, and sadly, this battle is going to be getting harder and harder. So I appreciate you for it.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking on that and telling us more about the book. Well, we will put you in the virtual green room, and we'll see you back in a few minutes where librarians can ask questions. All right, we're moving on to our next author. Can I welcome on screen Justin C. Key? Hi, Justin. How are you? Oh, muted. I do it all the time.
Okay, how's that?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. No, I'm great. It's great to be here.
Great. We were talking earlier because Justin came to Toledo for a library event, and that's the first time we met for and I'll do your full bio in a second, but for your story collection. And you had that room, like a pen could drop, like you would hear it. Everyone was so tuned in to what you had to say. And so I can't wait to hear more about your debut novel. So I'll introduce and then I'll hand it off. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So Justin C. Key is a practicing psychiatrist and speculative fiction writer. He is the author of the story collection The World Wasn't Ready for You. That's the one I was referencing. And his stories have appeared in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Strange Horizons, Escape Pod, Lightspeed, and Tor.com. He received a BA in biology from Stanford University and completed his residency in psychiatry at UCLA. He lives in LA with his wife and 3 children. And I mean, the question always is like, how do you have enough time to write? I don't know. I'm very impressed. But we have The Hospital at the End of the World coming February 3rd, 2026. And I'm going to hand it off to you. Tell us more about it.
Okay, so The Hospital at the End of the World will be my debut novel, and it's a near future science fiction medical thriller. And to kind of paint a picture of this novel, I wanted to first talk about where I was at when I came up with the idea for it. So the idea for this novel came at the beginning of my medical school journey. I'm a physician, and that was about 12 years ago. And I had gotten into Mount Sinai School of Medicine in Manhattan. And a month before classes started, I had the opportunity to shadow the Dean of Medical Education, Dr. David Muller. And he was head of this visiting doctors program where the physicians would go in and meet patients that were too bedridden or too sick to make it to the hospital, and actually go to their homes. And Mount Sinai was in Manhattan between the Upper East Side and East Harlem. So seeing the wealthiest patients in the country and the poorest patients in the country. And so I got to be able to see him in work and go on this journey with him. And I remember we walked into a man's apartment. He was about mid 80s, and we experienced him take his last breath. And I remember watching Dr. Muller, and all he had was his stethoscope, his hands, and his bedside manner. And he went up to the patient and he examined, talked with him, comforted him, and appropriately told me what was going on. And then we saw him take his last breath. And right after that, we transitioned to sitting with the wife, now turned widow, and talking with her about, what this meant for her, like helping her kind of just process in that moment. And that was my entry into medical education. And I remember it being about that human, that physician-patient, human-to-human interaction. And then I got thrust into medical school classrooms, and we're having to learn all these things about the body, about technology, and really just data, data, data. And then we go into the wards and start to see patients, but then there are images, there are lab results, there's consults, and we spend so much more and more time with the technology, and actual time with the patients became less and less. And you could see that tension there. The doctors actually want to spend more time with the patients. The patients want to see the doctors more. But then there's also this life-saving technology that is a great tool that pushes medicine forward. So I had already entered medicine with this dichotomy, like in my mind, of the balance that you have to walk between technology and being a human doctor. So then I started thinking about, like, okay, where's AI going to go? Even back then, algorithms were already starting to lead our lives. Like if you go into Google, depending on what the first 10 results are, that could inform which medical schools you apply to, or where you're going to send your kids to school, or what like tutoring you might get for your kids, or like what neighborhood you might live in. So algorithms were already starting to kind of lead us in different ways. And I knew that it was going to come at a head with medicine one day, like when we have to choose, like who leads, us or the machines. So that's kind of the backdrop. And over the last 10 years, obviously, with AI kind of taking off, the novel has evolved. But with that is what's in my mind. The Hospital at the End of the World takes place about 20 years in the future, and it follows Pac, a young man, early 20s, who's applying to medical school, much like I did. And, society at that time is on the cusp of just giving the reins over to algorithms. They choose how we eat, they drive our cars, they choose like what schools we go to from early on, and almost have silently like our paths lined up for us. And Pac has grown up with this. So he's a coder, he knows how to use all the latest gadgets. He knows how to really use it to his advantage. And he's applying to medical schools, and he's a top applicant. And the global conglomerate AI company, the Shepherd organization, they have just bought all the top medical schools in the country. So they really are pushing that the future of medicine is really going to be led by the AI. And Pac, he is drinking this Kool-Aid, so he's applying to all these top medical schools. And the book starts with him learning that he's been rejected from every single one of them. Now, he should have gotten into all of them. So he's wondering, okay, what's going on? Why am I not getting these schools? He dives into his studies to try to make himself a better applicant. And then he learns that his father, who was a physician, who he wanted to be like when he was younger, old school physician, like my dean of medical education, Dr. David Muller, still sees patients like in his home clinic, still values that one-to-one, that touch. He would pick up a stethoscope before he'd pick up like a probe, or he would listen to a patient's belly before getting imaging. He learns that his father has been working to expose the dangers of AI, specifically the dangers of AI if we let it take over medicine. And then all of a sudden, Pac goes from applying to these medical schools led by the Shepherd organization to fleeing from New York after his father is killed by the Shepherd organization, and it's not safe for him either. So he finds himself on the run, and he goes to the one place his father told him he'd be safe, New Orleans. So New Orleans, like over the next 20 years or so, has really been left behind by the country, or has gone in a different direction. Because of climate change and because of the hurricanes, they've really had to kind of take it upon themselves. Like, okay, we have to decide our own future. So they've rejected all of the technological advancements, and they've even made it so that some AI is banned within the city. Pac's father says, this is where you go. This is where you'll be safe. And Pac travels there and it finds that Hippocrates is the last human-led hospital with human doctors that are running things. And the medical school that's attached to it is the last medical school that's teaching doctors how to lead and human-led medicine. So Pac, he goes from being in his element, being surrounded by technology, thinking that that's the future, to having to humble himself and enroll in this medical school where he doesn't have the gadgets, he doesn't have like the virtual interfaces to tell him like if he's doing things right with the patient, or to outline all the anatomy just perfectly for him, he has to learn the way that his father learned, to trust his intuitions as a human and to really trust that human to human interaction. So that's the backdrop. And then as he's learning medicine, as he's getting his groove, insert medical mystery that has to do with the Shepherd organization, who is really trying to take down New Orleans and Hippocrates, because they see that as the last thing that's in the way of them having global control over medicine. So it's the hospital at the end of the world. At its surface is an AI versus medicine story, but at its core, it's about human interaction. It's about the powers that come from the physician patient relationship. And it's also about the journey of learning to become a doctor, the wonders, the heartbreak, the horrors, the difficulties. And Pac has to navigate that all, and also being an outsider and figuring out like what's going on in New Orleans. It is my love medicine to medicine. My love letter to medicine, and it's also a stark warning about like some of where technology is going today. And I really do hope that you all enjoy it.
Oh yeah, that was a great way to sum it up. And I mean, what a wonderful ode to like the power of human touch and emotion. I think as writers, everyone here, like that's what you want to get to. Like, what's the power of the people in the background? But I think what really came through is just this internal struggle of like, what is that balance? And then you kind of feel as the reader, like, I don't have the technology has either. So I'm kind of like, what's happening? So takes you on the ride as well, but really like the human at the center. I just want to read this quote from Maurice Broaddus. It says, "The more you read Key, the more layers he reveals. From sci-fi to horror to fantasy, he now turns his deft eye to techno thriller. He takes the first-hand expertise and takes careful aim at the medical industrial complex, technology, and examines what it means to be human. Like John Grisham meets Cory Doctorow, The Hospital in the World is a medical thriller for the age of AI," which is a great quote. And I wondered, I think you kind of touched on this, but like, why New Orleans? Like, why was there any other idea, or was it always going to be New Orleans where this hospital?
It's moved around. It's moved around. One of the reasons is that okay, one, my best friend, he's from New Orleans, and so I've spent a good amount of time there just through him. And just thinking about who would be kind of most affected the next 20 years, and thinking about like the disparities that may exist, especially as there's like natural disasters, and kind of being able to loop in like some of the climate change as well. So it being a combination of a city that I love to visit. I'm not from there, just in case anybody gets in the comments. I'm not from there. Also is they have like a few medical institutions, so it's already a center for medical education and research, and also thinking about who may be most affected these next 20 years, especially thinking about things like climate change, and if technology helps with that, or if it compounds or makes some of those disparities worse.
Yeah, totally makes sense. That's great. Thank you. All right, we will see you back after our final, last but not least, author. I'll hand it off to Grace.
Thanks, Lainey. I am very excited to welcome T. Kira Madden on Writers to Watch. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're really, really excited to have you to talk about WHIDBEY, which is on sale March 10th, 2026. Saying 2026 is still like my memory. But I'm going to read a bio, and then I'll pass it off for you to talk about your debut novel, because you've written a memoir. And yeah, so T. Kira Madden is a diasporic Kanaka Oyivi, Native Hawaiian writer and the author of the acclaimed memoir, Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls, which was named a New York Times Editor's Choice, as well as a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle John Leonard Prize and the Lambda Literary Award. She is a founding editor of No Tokens, a magazine of literature and art, and has received fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts, Hedgebrook, Tin House, McDowell, and Yaddo. winner of the 2021 Judith A. Markowitz Award. She is an assistant professor at Hamilton College in creative writing and Indigenous Studies and served as the distinguished writer in residence at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So thank you so much for being here. This is such a searing novel that really sits with you for a long time after you read it. I've been thinking about it since I read it for the first time. So I'm really excited for our librarians to dig in, and I will let you tell everyone a bit more.
Thank you so much. Thank you, librarians, joining us tonight. I'm so grateful to be in this company. I'm so grateful to you, librarians, and to you, Lainey and Grace, and also to be in this company and hear about these other books, which, like, my book tower is going to grow after tonight. These sound amazing, and there's oddly so many, I think, things we have in common in our work. So WHIDBEY is right here. It is my debut novel, literary fiction. And I think I too will go back to kind of why I wrote this book or where it began. So almost 9 years ago, I was traveling to Whidbey Island, which is just off the coast of Washington near Seattle, if you're familiar. You have to take a ferry boat. And I was traveling to Whidbey Island for a writing residency. And at the time, I was also battling a stalker, a person who had sexually abused me as a child, which is something that I wrote about in my first book, the memoir, Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls. While I was at that residency, I had to leave several times back and forth on the ferry to fly to Florida to appear in court with this stalker in this case. Which later went to trial, and it was a federal trial and conviction. And on my way back for the fourth time to Whidbey Island, I met a stranger on the ferry boat. And after a lifetime of really kind of repressing and suppressing this story and this thing that had happened to me as a child, for some reason, inexplicably, when this stranger struck up a conversation with me and I was crying, I told him everything. I told him everything that I hadn't told the people closest to me. The stranger came back with a very strange proposition right out of a Highsmith novel where he asked me, "Would you like me to find him and kill him for you? No one would know we ever met." So I was I was a little bit frazzled. I immediately kind of distanced myself from the stranger. I said no. I never heard from the stranger again. We never had contact again. But in the days after that experience, when I got back to the island and was back into isolation at this writing residency, I did wonder what it would have felt like to indulge in the fantasy of revenge, to have said yes. So in the days and weeks, I kept thinking about that, and I started this novel almost 9 years ago. So this novel, Whidbey, does indulge in the revenge fantasy. The beginning, I too, just like Brad, have kind of ruined the opening chapter for you, but the beginning introduces this proposition. We meet three characters then, our three main characters. The first is Birdie Chang, a Chinese American woman whose case against her childhood abuser had been dismissed as a child. She's the one who's off to Whidbey Island, who says yes to this stranger. And then in the days after this opening chapter, we learn from her abuser's mother, Mary Beth Boyer, back in Florida, that her only son, her only child, has been murdered. So we also hear from the mother of this abuser. She is the second narrator. The third narrator is someone named Lindsay King, also from Florida, who was also abused by the same person, but who has lived a very different life than Birdie Chang. She has appeared on a reality television show where producers pushed her into revealing this childhood trauma on TV, and then struck up a massive book deal for a tell-all memoir about childhood sex abuse. So the book really looks at these three characters, how they're all connected through violence and the cruelty of one man. In this novel, I wasn't interested in telling my story anymore. I had memoir for that, and I did that. But the joy and thrill of fiction for me is to consider the questions that, going through what I've been through in my own court case and trials, the things that have felt like too prickly to understand or make sense of or have answers to. So I wanted to not answer those questions, but ask them in this book. I wanted to ask, what does it take for a parent to keep showing up for their their child, an abuser, in court when faced with horrific evidence, which was the case in my trial. I wanted to ask, does revenge ultimately solve or heal anything? With Lindsay and Birdie, I wanted to explore how obsession and repression can imprint on the body and psyche in different ways. And why are some victims believed, considered credible or likable survivors, while others remain simply victims? I wanted to look at the intersection of privilege in the court system and in the carceral system as well. The first two parts of this novel revolve around this whodunit of what happened in the murder, and hearing from these three characters. And then section 3 opens the scope and shifts into an omniscience, where this omniscient narrator begins to implicate the reader and ask, why do you believe the stories that you're told? How does media impact who you choose to believe, or who we think is likable? So in the end, I hope it's also a tale of storytelling itself, how trauma is packaged and commodified, why people are believed, and why we feel so drawn to these kind of stories that from an outside perspective might feel really juicy and mysterious, but at their core are just full of pain and suffering. So it is a dark book, but I did have the best time writing it, and asking these questions and posing them. It's a story that's obsessed me for, again, 9 years, and in some ways my whole life. I didn't find the answers to any of these questions, but it did bring me to this novel. So I'm so grateful for this event and for your readership.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think, like I said earlier, this is one of those books that sticks with you. And I love a book that doesn't answer those questions for you, because that's where you get to have discussions with people. And I wanted to call this out as like a really great book club book. I think there's a lot to dive into here. And I really loved what you said about kind of this idea of like fiction and what is truth when it's from memory. I don't know. I just really liked that. You called that out. So thank you for sharing that. And I am going to read, there's so many quotes that came in for this book, but I'm going to read one from an author I love, Kristen Arnett, who's the best-selling author of Mostly Dead Things. She says, "Whidbey is the book I've been praying for, a novel that asks to hold your hand while it shows you exactly how much harm human beings are capable of inflicting on one another. It is feral and sly. It's simultaneously a goddamn tearjerker. Madden's storytelling is gorgeously multifaceted, reflecting both vulnerability and violence with great earnesty. Whidbey harnesses all of the author's tremendous talent and wields it with surgical precision. Kira Madden is undoubtedly one of the greatest contemporary writers." I just think that's lovely praise, and all of it is so true. And I know this book is one that's definitely been on my mind, and it's really just like one of those debuts where you're like, pardon my French, but like, holy shit. So
Thank you.
congratulations on this debut, and thank you for being here. And I'm gonna welcome everybody back.
Oh, come on screen, everyone. That was all so great. It was lovely to hear in your own words, and just thank you for sharing. The chat is very excited. I think the consensus is we're okay spoiling first chapters. Like the librarians are okay with it because it really grips them. So just doing a little poll on the side. And then Grace, do you want to start off? Let me see. Oh, we have let me see. They're just like they're coming in from like different places. Jennifer Winberry says all the best stories start with a man walks into a funeral home. And we have someone who has read The New Neighbors already, Claire, and they loved it. So great comment there. Yeah.
A lot of exciting things. I can start with a question for Claire. I kind of love how like plausible this plot is. Like you take something like very mundane, like having neighbors, and you make this like edge of your seat novel out of it. And it's so much easier to kind of like put yourself in the shoes of this protagonist. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what inspired you to take this idea of just, you know, overhearing something from your neighbors and turn it into this book that really had this twist that I did not see coming at all.
Well, thank you. I think it's because I think all of us can relate to having neighbours because, I've had some dubious neighbours in my past. who I've probably not really liked, or they've been a bit I don't know. We had these neighbours once who were very much older than us, and they were a little bit they didn't, I don't know, they were just didn't seem to like us very much. Me and my husband, we were quite young at the time. I think it's because we were much younger, and they were just a bit difficult. And I remember thinking, gosh, imagine if this couple were sinister in some way. And they weren't sinister, obviously, they were just an older couple. But it gave me the idea. This was years ago, and then I watched a film with John Travolta. It's a really old film called Blowout. I don't know if you've seen it. It's about he's a sound man in it, and he's collecting some sound, and he overhears this tire blowing out in a car, and then he overhears under it a gunshot. So I thought, well, that's quite interesting. Picking something up, picking up a conversation, and then putting your own twist on the conversation. Is it an innocent conversation, or is there something sinister in the conversation? So that was where the idea came from that, really.
You say they probably weren't sinister, but
They could have been.
They could have been.
It could have been Henry and Marielle. Serial killers or something.
Let's hope not. But.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Kira and Brad about kind of, both of you have written fiction and nonfiction, and kind of for the two of you, what that process is like, how that differs or how it's similar, and how it feels like switching between those two. And Justin, you just also wrote your first novel after short stories. So I think to some extent you can also answer that if you'd like.
Kira, do you want to go first? Want me to go first? You're on mute still, but
go ahead, Brad.
Okay. And so for me, a good story is a good story. When I do fiction, well, I'll say it this way: when you do nonfiction, you just tell the story as it happened, right? If I'm doing, whether it's my own short stories that of things I've written about in my life, or if I'm doing Abraham Lincoln or JFK or something in World War II, okay, what did Winston Churchill do next? Where was Adolf Hitler next? Tell the next thing in the story. In the JFK book, where was Jackie Kennedy next? Tell the thing that happens. When you're dealing with a thriller or your fiction, it's just a blank page. That's it. It's much more freeing because you could do whatever you want. And of course, as in all things, our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. It's the hardest thing because you're looking at a blank page and you can't rely on anything. No one's going to tell you except yourself. But there are obviously some things are easier about one and some things are harder about the other, but that's like everything in life. And I wish everything, were easy, but if it was easy, as someone once said to me, everyone would do it.
Yeah, I love that answer. I think for me, I often go, because I do switch often between this essayistic memoir form or short story and fiction novel form. For me, it often comes back to kind of the initial energy, the generating energy that comes behind it. So I find often when I sit down to write and something is coming from a place of grief or loss, it becomes a work of nonfiction. I'm just writing back to someone or something, or some land. When I sit down to write and it's coming from this energy source of desire, I wish something looked this way. I wish it would happen like this. I wish this system worked in this exact way, or I made that decision. That's often where the fiction comes. So it's kind of that initial question, that initial desire. Am I reaching into grief or an emptiness, or am I reaching into a fierce desire? Of course, there's overlap between the two that appear in both. I have a lot of fun in both. I actually find nonfiction, at least for me in the memoir form, to be just as mysterious and blank pagey as fiction, because there's nothing that makes less sense to me than why certain decisions have been made, why I acted in certain ways, and why the people in my life have acted in certain ways. So it's still, I think often of what the writer Natasha Trethewey has said, that writing or a story is like a full night sky, and then we're just finding the constellation. So I think in both, it's we have this whole galaxy, and then we're just finding what's the shape for this story. But I agree with Brad too, that it's just about telling a good story in the end.
I love that, by the way. You're making me think, because I always think when I get to the end of my book, what am I dealing with? What's the thing I want? But I love that you see it at the beginning, because I always have to find it in the end.
Oh.
And Natasha Trethewey, Her memoir was like, oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Right. And then Justin, I feel like I worded that kind of weirdly when I asked you that, so I'm gonna repeat it. But what were the differences you noticed between writing in, short story form versus writing in, novel where you kind of have a lot more room, I guess, to expand?
Yeah, and thinking of the difference between short stories and novels, like part of my writing journey, it was like a little bit practical. Actually, I started off writing novels, and had written like a few of like those trunk novels, like First Million Words of Practice. And then I went to med school, and it was just really hard to kind of keep a novel in my head or to sit down and revise a novel. Like I only have like an hour or maybe less in between classes and kids, etc. So I started working more on short stories. That was something that I could work on in critique groups. That was something that I can take to workshops. So I thought of it as like really kind of like a training ground for me to hone characterization, to hone theme, to explore this idea. You can kind of really, I think, dip in and really try to kind of have fun with like really like one or two elements. And then as I was able to kind of hone those, coming back to the novel, then it's like you have to get the balance that, okay, now I have all this room and I could try to tackle all of these things, but you also have to be focused, right? I think back when I first started, the first novel that I wrote, I think it's right there, but no one ever see it. It just had everything that I always wanted as a reader, as a kid. It's like, let me put this in there, let me put that in there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And the novel has a lot more room for that, but you still are deciding, okay, what it is that I want to say. But now, like through that lens, like I have a lot more room to say it and a lot more nuance, set pieces and characters or what have you. The biggest thing I would say, just in terms of the difference between a novel and a short story, for me is almost a revision process, to be honest. I'd say, like me writing the first draft of uh, an 80,000 word novel is going to take what uh, 16 times as long than it would for me to write like a 5,000 word short story. But it's that revision process. Like I can sit down in a couple like afternoons and like get critique on a 5,000 word short story and revise it. Whereas like a novel, it's I think being able to kind of like have that all like in the changes you're making in chapter one like reflect what's also happening in chapter 30. Like that's I think the more time intensive part, and the fun part, to be honest, for me. Don't ask me why I'm doing it, I won't say that, but like looking back on it.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting to hear about the editing. Claire, I have a question for you, kind of in the same vein. How do you go about planning a book like this with these twists and these you know, uh reveals? Do you have the plot laid out beforehand, or does it kind of like reveal itself to you and evolve as you write? What, Elena, you always say you have a saying that you
I
ask.
mean, it's not my saying. I love that you think it is, but I'll take credit. It's no plotter or pantser is what people say. Yeah, I'll take credit for it though.
I'd say I was more of a pantser. So I can't see the book like before I start writing it. I wish I could. I think it'd make it a lot easier in the editing process. But I know the sort of twist, I know the ending, and I know the sort of the villain. But apart from that, I have to just write it and see where it takes me. But like I said, in the editing process, then I have to do a lot of work because like for now, like the book I'm writing now, it's already had one big edit, which would probably be like the sort of second or third draft if I'd plotted it all out first, and now it's going to come back for another big edit. So I spend months editing. So sometimes I wish I could plot it all out first, and then I hope that maybe the editing process would be. But I just can't. I just can't see the book. I can't see it. I have to like work through it as I'm writing it.
Totally. That's the journey. Uh,
It's painful.
Yeah.
and
And
it's
then let's see. I have another question. Oh, Jennifer Wimberg. Justin, what made you set your novel in a near future, and was there a particular author who influenced you?
Let's see. So setting it in the near future. So I also like with my short stories, like so I would dabble in horror and fantasy, and I think that there was an appeal of like going like 100 years in the future or even more. But then there's all this kind of like, what is society going to look like? It's almost like an alien thing, right? By being able to do it like a step in the future, I was able to kind of really root in this being like my first novel and being able to also kind of really lean into like what it is that I wanted to say and the cool things I wanted to do with technology. It let me set it in a place that I was familiar with. I did med school in New York, and then and even 20 years in the future, the elevators still break. There's still like air conditioners that hang out the window. It's very recognizable to us. So there's a lot of things about New York, like if you've been there, that are probably there like 20 years ago. But then there's a recognizable setting, but then there's these little nuggets. There's these like you see how society has changed in that familiar setting. So it was both kind of a practical thing for like the reader to kind of be able to step in, and me for as a writer to be able to be like, okay, I'm familiar with this setting now. Instead of like recreating the wheel, now I can focus on what it is that I want to say about medicine and what I want to say about AI. And I'd say a big influence on me growing up and continues today. Michael Crichton, he was a physician. He went through medical school, and I think he did a little bit of residency. But I loved Michael Crichton as a kid. I felt like I learned so much reading about him, and it was also as a writer just very encouraging for me. Like really quick, I heard a story when he was in medical school. He went to Harvard Medical School. He's an overachiever, or he was, and he overheard his professors there discussing the validity of a novel that he had written, but didn't know that he had written it. Right. So as I was going through medical school and also wanted to write, and I was like, Michael Crichton can do it during med school. I can do it too. So both as a reader and as a writer, he's always been a big influence.
Yeah, you can. Love it. Thank you. So Brad, I would be remiss not to say if libraries don't make don't show up in the book. One of my favorite things that I had highlighted was when they go into a library, there's you know what I'm gonna say. Can I
I
say
want to see
it?
if it's the exact quote I know
Okay.
what you're going to say. Is it the
Okay.
poster?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
Do you want
best.
to say it? You
You
can say
say it. Go
it.
it.
Okay. So I highlighted this. So they go into a library and they're on by the bulletin board, it says, "Warning, librarians are silently correcting your grammar." I
So
love it.
let me tell you where I stole that from because I completely stole it. So my wisest soul in my life was my agent who passed away. I was
Mm.
with her 25 years, Jill Neerum, and she used to have a poster, a placard, I mean, on her desk that said, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." And I did this scene in The Viper where they go into a library. And I was like, what's the best library sign? Because librarians have the best signs always, always, always. And I went through like, I have like a list of all these like ridiculous things I found. And I was like, it's got to be librarians are silently correcting your grammar. So as soon as you said library, I'm like, I know exactly what you're going for. Because I feel like I wrote this Viper just to put that in the book.
I love it. I love it. It's perfect, and I mean, it was one of the first things I like highlighted. I was like, well, we have to talk about this. So I love that it's an actual sign somewhere. And then like right after, I think they're like, not if you don't talk to them. Like they don't.
Not that's it. Trust me. That library scene in the book it's like such a vital little part, but you can see that I spend I get whatever you could say a librarian's got books, but you see I spend time there. I do bits that I'm like, because that's where I grew up. That's where I lived was in a library. So there's no reason she really has to be in a library there, but I'm like, watch this. And I turn the car the whole way because you
Yeah,
got to.
it's a safe space, and you know you can flesh out the story there.
Or me always.
Yeah, yeah. I do have one question. It's a little, I'm sorry to hear, it's maybe more for our thriller slash sci-fi slash horror kind of genre question, because I was just at an event in Ohio and we talked about genre, and I think Justin, your book is like a perfect mix mash of different genres, horror, sci-fi. But one big thing where people were saying like they go in and they find like people want those kind of thrilling elements or maybe things with death because they're like we can work it out on the page and it's not in life. Why do we think that like a thriller is the perfect safe space for someone even if someone dies, or if AI and technology in the chat, everyone's like, oh no, all my fears. So I don't know why, if you have anything to say about why that's a perfect platform to kind of work out what we're thinking about in the current state of the world.
I mean, I just think that's why the genre exists. That's why all genre exists, is so we're working on that thing that we're struggling with in the real in our real universe. And in this, I used to think that I was a writer because I was like, I'm so creative, or I can turn a sentence, or I know how to make dialogue work. But I've come to realize that I think I'm a writer because I love control. When I'm in this little book, every character does exactly what I will tell them to do. They all react the way I want them to react. It's the safest spot in the whole universe. And in the end, it's going to all make sense to me, which is look around right now, not what the real universe is doing. So I'm very curious what, like, Kira also, I mean, I think, especially when you start on writing nonfiction and you're writing about Boca Raton, and then you're suddenly doing your first novel, and please, everyone support it. This is your first novel. That's the most amazing thing to do. I think all of those things are our ways of kind of grappling with those issues that the real world doesn't make sense with.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I co-sign like as writers, a lot of times going through life, and it's maybe why I write. It's like as things happen, it's like if I was writing this story, it's not how I would write it, you know. And I think that, death, like thinking of death in books, if it's done well, and, if it's published and it should be done well. It has a purpose, it's for some reason. Whereas I think that that's very different from in life. I was just really quickly thinking about like few months ago when I heard that like Malcolm Jamal Warner passed suddenly. It's like, what is the rhyme or reason to this? Is not. It's just random, like tragedy, right? And I think that when you're in the pages of a book, even as there's death or there's tragic things that happen, it's like, okay, this has a purpose in the narrative. Let me, let's see what it is, and I think that that's where that kind of safety comes from.
I think people get their comeuppance as well, don't they? Like in novels, you can make the baddie get their comeuppance, but in real life, that doesn't happen always.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true, Tira. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to exclude you, because that is true. I guess you're controlling this narrative too, and within a novel. I mean, within your novel. Yeah.
Yeah. I love this idea of control. I will be taking that to therapy this week for sure. That's amazing. I always
By the
felt
way,
like,
I totally got it from my therapist. I'm not joking. So
oh, wow.
if it's the same therapist, it'll be even perfect, because then you can like bring it right back to where boomerang it.
A lot of work for therapists this week. I love it. That's so funny.
But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kira. Please talk about well, I mean, I would love to hear that.
Oh no, it really resonates. I think with my first book, I always said that writing has always been a place for me where you can't really, to the point of control, you can't really be interrupted, right? Um, I come from a household where there were always voices much louder than mine. Like I couldn't actually get my piece out in any way. So writing a memoir, especially, and then of course this translated and shifted into the novel. It's like a place where, of course, I can have my own interruptions when writing, but I can actually tell a story from beginning to end, and nobody gets to interrupt me. Someone can put the book down, but my piece is all there and complete as I can make it. And I think the novel, it's the same way. It's like, again, this ability to pose questions with a thoroughness, with seeing it to its end, that feels really satisfying and really exciting to me.
I think that's really interesting too, because you do switch perspectives in this book. So you kind of give all of those characters their chance to kind of say their piece too. So I think that's really, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, what did I tell you? We had the question. What are you reading right now? And what are you enjoying? And Grace has the quickest typing I've ever seen in my life. And we'll put them in a catalog, because our librarians love a catalog with everything put together. So she may ask you
Yeah,
to
I am
repeat it.
fast, but slow and clear for the titles is really helpful.
Yeah,
Especially
and it
when
could be
you're
quick. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on one second.
So yeah, okay, we'll give Grace a second to get there. But yeah, it's quick. What are you reading? What are you enjoying? If you're, it could be a TV show, I guess. It could be anything you want. Whatever you're enjoying. It seems open-ended, but they also want to know what you're reading.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, I'm gonna start with Claire.
Okay, so I've just finished a book called I Spy by C.M. Ewan, which I think is coming to the US next year, maybe. It's set on a Eurostar, and it's about this dad, and he's with his young daughter, and they're playing I Spy. They're going through security, just about to get on the Eurostar, which is the train from Paris to London. And they're just about to get on it, and the little girl says, "I spy with my little eye." So in the beginning with BM, and he's like distracted, and he's trying to get all his stuff on the through the security, and she says "bad man," and then she points to this man, and it's so chilling the way he writes it at the beginning. And then this bad man then is on the Eurostar with them, and it's sort of this whole thing happens, and it's like a countdown. I think it's like 2 hours. There's a 2 hour countdown. So and yeah. So I won't say any more because it'll ruin it. But it's a really, really good book. And TV wise, I'm watching The House of Guinness. I don't know if anyone else has seen that on Netflix, which is about the Guinness family, set in the 1800s, which is really gripping. I'm really enjoying it.
Right, I'm gonna go my way around. So Justin's next.
Okay, I'm reading Incidents Around the House by Josh, I think, Mallerman.
Oh, Josh Norman's great.
Yeah, and so funny thing, I'm part of this this book club, and like half of us are psychiatrists, and it was my turn to pick a book, and I was like, let me just do some hardcore horror. So I recommended this, and I gave them like an out with like another like book. I was like, y'all don't want to read it, but they chose this. I just started it, but I read like the first lines. It really just starts off with the horror, like good night, Daddo, good night, mommy. Mommy and Daddo leave my room. I pull the covers up to my chin. Other mommy comes out of the closet. And just like from the very beginning, it's like that could just be the whole book, So
We'll talk about getting fears out on a page.
yeah, I'm really excited about this one. So
Okay, Brad.
I was, I think, the last person on the planet to finish Demon Copperhead. So I finished it, and now I never read Poison Bible, so I read that. I'm reading that. I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl because I'm always reading kind of two things at once and completely different genres. And then I just finished Spectators, Brian Vaughan's Spectator graphic novel, which I loved. And I'm watching, what am I watching? Slow Horses. I love Slow Horses. It's funny. I write thrillers, but I don't really enjoy them because I just take them apart. But boy, it's the thing that kind of brought me back to finding my love of thrillers again. And anyway, new season's out.
So good. Okay,
Wait, really quick, what was the dungeon one that you had?
Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I thought I make me feel better. My friend of mine told me about it. I'm like, is this good? I've never heard of it. And I go online. It has like 30,000 5-star reviews, and it's book 7. I'm like, how did I miss 7 books of something? Like how I like to be on book 1 before you, like in the galley. And I was like, I clearly missed this thing, but it's really, really, really fun. Dungeon Crawler Carl with the best cat, the best cat character you're going to read in a long time. It's so good.
I love that.
Hey, Kira.
I'm always reading. I'm always doing audiobooks because I spend a lot of time in the car. I live 2 hours from work. So I have read it on the page before, but I just did the audio for the first time of Kiese Lehman's Heavy. And the audio is one of my favorite audiobooks I've ever heard. Like his delivery of it is just poetry. It was like outstanding to me. And I've just read 3 forthcoming books that I'm really excited about. One is Sophie Leffen's Her Kind, which comes out next year from either Mariner or Morrow. It's about a woman who has mysterious visions that she's going to die. So she invites all of her best friends to a house to decide who will take her child when she disappears from the earth. So it's a little bit speculative. The voice is really engaging and it's really mysterious. Che Yoon, her debut novel Tailbone is coming out, and it's about a soul boarding house in financial crash, and the prose is just some of the most beautiful prose I've read in years, like staggeringly beautiful. And finally, something that I think is maybe a sister book to Whidbey is a book called Hemlock by the writer Melissa Felivino. It's also a debut novel coming out, I think, in January, and it's pitched as a butch black swan of someone who goes to the woods alone, begins losing a sense of reality, and is also going through myriad transformations. They've all been the most exciting books for me recently.
That's great. I didn't realize in Heavy he read the
Yeah.
audio, so that's awesome. I love this question because I feel like everybody gets so excited to talk about like they're bursting to tell what book they've read. And I think I love seeing the joy. And someone in the chat just said, someone just turned me on to Dungeon Crawler, Carl. They are amazing. So the librarians, they've got your back. Okay, I think that's it. I think we got to most questions. We got everything covered, and everyone just has thoroughly enjoyed this. And I just want to put back on screen all the jackets so we have them up and remind us that pub dates. So we have The New Neighbors, Claire Douglas, February 17th, Viper by Brad Meltzer, January 6th, The Hospital at the End of the World, Justin C. Key, February 3rd, WHIDBEY, Kira Madden, March 3rd. So you've got some time to read, get your library reads votes in, get some e-galleys. We're here for you. We will get these books to you and to all our authors. If you want somebody's books, let us know. And thank you so much. We just quick housekeeping before I say my final thank you is don't forget, sign up for our presentation on Thursday. It's going to be great. We have a lot of books to get in. And then next month, November 4th, our next Writers to Watch, we have some great authors lined up. So come and join us. And just before we sign off, just thank you everyone for taking the time to talk to librarians today. This was just like, it's like my favorite night of the month to just, we get to commune and talk about books, and thank you. I really appreciate it.
It was a great night. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your day to chat with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.